times a day. So, oh,
I guess,
Oh.
just the,
so we're out there all the time
Yeah.
watching.
so in the course of a 5-year permit, I guess I'm just asking for, there is like some sort of manifest or some way for the zoning enforcement to say, oh, yep, you guys are doing your regular checks here, making sure we're maintaining everything. You guys are maintaining it as you say,
You're asking if he's keeping a law.
sort of manifest to demonstrate.
No,
that
we've
over
never
the
kept
course-
a log, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to say, we're giving a 5-year permit.
Yeah.
On the condition of use. There's some sort of, hey, they're checking every day, like that's.
Well, we don't dredge, we only dredge maybe for a 2-month period, so it's not a year-round operation, it's, you know, and we're restricted too, because the DEP is concerned of turbidity in the water. So they won't allow us to dredge during the oyster spawning season. They won't allow us to dredge in the winter flounder spawning season, which, you know, they say is gonna start around April 1st. So we have to, we can't, we have to dredge, we have a small window. You know, oyster spawning at one end and winter flounder at the other end, that we're restricted
So
to.
you're adhering to the DEP permits and all that. to
Yeah.
Ensure, monitor.
Yeah, we can't just go out there and dredge whenever we feel
Okay,
like
that's
it.
kind of what I was making sure.
Yeah, just 2 points or one other point, one other question. Your dredging is confined to your slip area, your dock area.
Yes.
You're not dredging the channel for the.
No, right, yeah,
Whole, park, just a point of clarification.
yes,
This petition is to raise the, height of your berm by 4 feet.
Yes.
That the engineer that you had consulted with said that, you have the, you could go to, physically, you could go to 9.
yes.
Is that the end? I mean, is that as far? Or, are we looking at 4 feet?
Well, let's put it this way, they did a whole bunch of borings,
Yeah.
they dug holes, so they did
See what I'm talking
they did a lot of investigative work,
about.
you know. I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that 9 feet from now, even the 4 feet from now, 10 years, from I'm 71, so
Yeah.
another 8
But
feet.
not
I
everybody
got about
has
another 8 feet to
71.
go, I'm hoping, you know, to 91, you know, but I don't expect to be doing this from 91, but, you know, but
we have to have-
there will come a time when
We're
we will.
teenagers, yes.
Our only alternative would be to put it in buckets into barges and take it out to sea. That
Yeah.
day will come someday. Yes.
My point is that 9 feet the end? Or,
Based on today's studies, yes.
or, we're going to have, a mountain out there.
Yes, yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, they thought that the 22 feet was gonna be the end. But then this geotechnical engineer came in and said, the guy who did this assumed you were gonna put 21-foot berm there, put 18 feet of material in there. And based on doing it that way, it was gonna, that was all you can handle for stability. But he didn't anticipate that, well, gee, if you only do 4 feet at a time, and then you're driving on that 4 feet, you're compacting it, and then you're putting only maybe a foot of material in there average per year, and it's getting compacted, that everything is gonna be a lot harder, more stable than we predicted, than if you did it all at once.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think any of us want to see, 75 feet
No.
long.
No.
That's why I'm asking.
Yes.
Is this 9 feet? Is that the end? And then some other.
But still, that's why we're asking for more, because we don't want a permit for a mountain when we don't need one.
Jinzia has her hand raised again.
Hi, yeah, Abby, I don't know if I can ask you a question. But did the town's consulting engineer have any concerns? I know he had his comments answered, but were there any concerns out of our consulting engineer?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, nothing that was raised outside of the scope of the reports that he gave. So there were multiple iterations. He went on a site visit. Every comment was answered, and there weren't any outstanding concerns or questions. So no.
Thank you.
What is the maximum height you could build that for? Like, when does it end? Like, you're at 26 feet now.
We're at 22, we're asking for 26.
Yeah,
And we're saying that according to the geotechnical engineer, we could go to 31.
they're not much higher. Like, when does that end? When the,
According to them, that's what it is.
so after 31 feet, it's done.
Right.
So you can't build it any higher.
That's what the current technology is telling us, yes.
That's like 3 stories.
Yes.
From sea level though.
Yeah, that's what, so when we talk about elevation, we're talking about like ground elevations, right? Not the berm itself is 30.
There are,
Okay.
years-
With
lot
this,
more.
we'd like to, give an opportunity to the public, if there's anyone here from the public who would like to speak, if you would please identify yourself for the record.
John Olson, Pratt Road. Yeah, it was about 10 years ago. There was a change in the marine zone to allow housing on this property. I raised issues back then about heights. And I guess in 10 years, we're going by the 5-year calculation of 5 feet. That's an additional 10 we've had over a period of 10 years. There's regulations here that say you can't fill and then still use your 30 some odd feet high for a building. My concern is that I think you're talking about 30, 31, possibly to do 35, and then you're gonna put a 34-foot building on top of that. You know, that's a little bit much. So my question was, you know, what are we doing as far as, you know, with a log, checking what these elevations are? Because the elevation started at the marsh and the dredge and all the material put up. By the way, I paid a lot of money to get rid of phragmites at the back of my house. And the state doesn't want it. Maybe it holds back some of the berm or something, but I think that when we changed the regulation for residential, I had a, difficulty with it. I was in full support of putting a larger building in there to do work on boats when it came to the height, because that's marine use. I want to see marine use. I don't want to see us lose access to the marina. You know, we see a lot of places where what happens, they build condos, take the property, put it in condo slips. Next thing you know, the public doesn't have the access that it once had to the water. So, this is, one, I'm not in favor of it. Two, if it's approved, I'd like to know where the benchmark is that we're counting. If housing's built there, we're gonna take that into consideration, because that's on the books that, we had that monstrosity at Shore Road where they came in and put, I think, 15, 20 foot of fill, then they went to 34 foot on top of that. So I just, I don't know where we come up. And I asked the question 10 years ago, what's the benchmark? Where is it? Where are we gonna measure from when housing is built on those properties? Some are lower, some are higher. But what is the benchmark? Because we need to know, because that's being filled. And you have to take it into consideration when we're approving, whatever buildings or structures put there. So with that, everybody else down there, I mean, we're dredging the harbors all the time, I do understand what we do up the river, every marina, it's grandfathered in, 50, 60 years ago. Back then, a lot of marinas did it that way. So they were able to grandfather in, do it this way. But eventually what happens, whether it be by height, they say you can't go any higher. Or, somebody says, we don't want to do it anymore, and we dredge it, take it away, and barge it just like every other marina does. Actually, it's pretty good because you can save some money on this system. But, I raised those issues 10 years ago.
Thank you.
I'd like to answer that. And that is that we did do some studying of the regulations. I know that, my interest is to keep the marina going. And because, my life is limited, I enjoy what I do. My son has bigger visions. And he's the one who, kind of came to try to get the regulations changed. But at that time, we did study the regulations. And the benchmark, I believe, is 1987. It is in our regulations that the heights that are allowed are the 1987, and I forgot the name of the gentleman who did the surveying of the town. that then, but there is a survey of the town in 1987, and that's referenced in the regulations, and that is the benchmark. So if we add another 10 feet of mud, that doesn't mean we can build a building that's another 10 feet higher. There is that 1987 level, which is what is in, I believe that that's in the regulations, that is.
I remember that too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do we know what the elevation is? I mean, thanks for answering, because that
Yeah.
answers my question.
Well, this gentleman the town hired, he did do a survey of the whole town.
Mr. Chair, it sounds like Kathy is saying that when John Guskowski, your previous consulting planner was here, that the commission may have amended the regulations. to
Yeah,
remove
we
that.
took that out because nobody knew where it was.
That's
So
why
there is a benchmark.
the map
Oh,
is, that map is missing.
It's, yeah, so they took
It
it.
was there. That's what I thought we were dealing with.
Yeah, that's why I remember it now. You're right.
Nobody could find them.
Go ahead, Jay.
So that land could be built on?
Well, wait, no. Yeah, it technically,
Zoning wise,
the marine district, and the marine district does allow residential use.
only because of 10 years.
So, okay, is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak? You okay, hearing none, any other questions from the, commission? Okay. With that, would anyone like to, make a motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah, Eddie Alberino, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
You-
I'll second that, Mike Newton.
Okay. Discussion, closing the public hearing. Hearing none, all those in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye.
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 Closed. Stands, okay, the public hearing is closed. Thank you. The next item on the agenda are staff reports. We have two staff reports related to the public hearings. The first one was the staff report on the electric vehicle charging kiosk. The one recommendation in there that I would like to go with is that we discuss it tonight, but allow staff to listen to it and help draft a motion, whatever motion based on that discussion. And then next month we can take up actually take up that motion and that was the recommendation of staff. I think that's a very good idea. Because it is a complicated thing. I think that's good. In the other two staff reports, we have one for the special exception that we've just closed. And we also have a staff report related to, well, actually, it's the same report, but it also just has a CAM application to it, which is where it's located. That staff report does have a proposed motion for both the CAM and for the special exception. And then the last staff report that's in there, and if you want to interrupt me and talk, is our request for proposals for the consulting for the 2025 plan of conservation and development. If you had a chance to read it, in my view, this draft is asking for everything, including the kitchen sink, and that's probably what we should be asking for. The only comment I saw is it talks about housing, but it doesn't mention affordable housing and whether we're making progress towards that. It was the only thing I thought was missing. Did anybody else have comments on that draft? Okay.
So what would be helpful for the staff reports is essentially authorization from this group to use this draft. What I would do under housing is, put housing / affordable housing
That's what-
consistency with planning requirements in the state. So just so it's explicit for the consultants. And if I make that modification, the question is, are folks okay if we go out on the street with this, with the understanding that we've gone through the budget referendum and we have our second half of our budget coming up available July 1, which means the earlier I advertise, the earlier we can potentially get somebody in, to start this project.
So what you're looking for is a motion to authorize staff to use the draft report modified to include specific statement of affordable housing, not just housing, as the basis for an RFP for engaging a consultant to help us with the new plan of conservation and that's the motion.
That would be.
Okay, well, I'll make that.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Mike. Okay. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, what did you say? We couldn't really hear you, Mike.
Nope, sorry.
Okay, with that, all those in favor,
Aye.
opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries, thank you. The next thing on the agenda is, new business preliminary discussion of 136 Liberty Street Apartments. Is there an agent or applicant?
There is.
Sure.
Good evening. For the record tonight, my name is Bill Sweeney. I'm a land use attorney and a partner at the law firm of Tobin Carberry, over in New London. It's good to see some of you. I recognize some of you, from when I was here a few years ago for the shops at Indian River. But it's nice to be back here tonight. I am appearing on behalf of an entity called Strawberry Hill Realty LLC and its principal, Dr. Ahmed Abrahim, who's here in the audience with me tonight. The doctor is a developer out of Stratford, Connecticut. He's also a property owner here in Clinton as well. Joining me also tonight, I have Ellen Bartlett, who couldn't join us in person, but she is a civil engineer with CLA Engineers out of Norwich, Connecticut. I also have Brian Cleveland. Brian is a licensed architect with Brian Cleveland Architects out of Monroe, Connecticut. Tonight, we've requested this informal, non-binding pre-application workshop to really share a concept that our client is working on for a small affordable housing project here in Clinton. More importantly, though, we're here to try to obtain some feedback from you on the proposal, to garner some suggestions and initial comments, and hopefully help us refine our plans as we move forward a more formal submission sometime later this year. As you're aware, non-binding workshops are permitted by our general statutes, section 7-159B, and they're really intended to allow for honest and candid dialogue between a commission and an applicant prior to the formal submission process. I've used these workshops with Abby quite extensively in her previous position as the planner in Waterford. I found them to be really helpful. And it really allows us to be able to get to the heart of what your issues are and your concerns. And I think it makes a better product at the end of the day. I'm going to ask Ellen if she has the ability to share, put our concept plan up. And Ellen will go over it in a little bit more detail in a second.
I mean, that co-host.
Make her a host.
Well, I made her a co-host, but.
She should have sharing, she's co-host.
Can you see that?
No.
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 Nope, you still see you, Ellen.
It didn't ask me to, I made her a co-host.
Oh, so looks like it's starting.
It's
That
got it. Yep.
Here you go.
Yep.
Excellent. Our client currently owns Liberty Brook Estates, which is an apartment complex which spans actually two separate parcels of land along Liberty Street and Liberty Place here in Clinton. The existing apartment complex is two buildings. It dates back to the early 1960s. It's brick construction, 2 stories on both buildings. The proposed project site that we're going to be talking about tonight is the southernmost of those 2 buildings. This is the northernmost parcel of Liberty Brook Estates. This is the southern one. Here's the existing building. And this is the new proposed building that we're proposing behind that existing building. The new building is going to be on this 3.6 acre parcel. And as I said, this parcel already has sort of the second building in the Liberty Brook Estates project, which is 24 units, 2-story, again, brick construction, multifamily. The underlying zoning in this area is R60 with single-family zone. And these apartments are pre-existing non-conforming in their condition. They were been here for the better part now of 60 years. Over the last few months, we've been working with Dr. Abraham on plans to build this new mixed income 2-story, 24-unit apartment building at the rear of the parcel behind the existing apartment building. And this building would actually back up to Interstate 95. If you had a chance to go out there, this would be behind that brick building. Literally, you would not be able to see it from Liberty Place. In fact, there's enough heavy vegetative buffer between us and 395 right of way that probably no one will know this building is here unless you're part of this development. So it's a really secluded spot. Due to the underlying zoning of the parcel being R60, we are planning to submit an affordable housing application under Connecticut General Statute 8-30G to allow the project to proceed. We did meet with Abby and your staff earlier this year. You do have an affordable housing district floating zone regulation in your regulations. It was actually, I believe it was used across the street for the affordable housing project called Liberty Place. We did look at that regulation. We found the regulation somewhat unusual, somewhat awkward. It was really unhelpful to our needs and really inconsistent, I think, in some ways to 830G, which really preempts local zoning. So what we're hoping to do is because it only has 2.72% of its housing stock is affordable right now, which is considerably less than the 10% threshold that the state mandates and thus makes you subject to the Affordable Housing Appeals Act. We're looking to submit what I would call a traditional 830G application to the commission. Again, later this year, we do have wetlands on the property, so we'll need to deal with that first. But we want to try to do this in what we call, or at least I refer to as a friendly 830G application. A lot of times developers will come into a community and say, well, this is what we're building. We're doing 830G. We don't want any input. We don't even want any comment. We're just going to basically put it in and expect our approval. I do quite a bit of affordable housing in sort of Eastern Connecticut. I find it's much better to go in and try to do something, you get the flexibility of the 830G process, but try to work with towns to try to capture what they're looking for, particularly on things like landscaping and maybe amenity packages, so that we get a product that's really positive, but still is affordable. Affordability of housing is a major issue in your plan of conservation and development. It's a major issue in every town, particularly those on the shoreline. And we think this application in this location is really really appropriate. Like I said before, you have the relatively new affordable housing project. I think it was built in 2017 across the street, Liberty Place. This would add on to the Liberty Brook Estates project with this affordable building. Our hope right now is to have 30% of the units in that 24-unit building, or 8 units, be deed restricted and meet the affordable income limits of 80% and 60% AMI for the census tract. That's the minimum requirement for eligibility under 830G. That's what we're working with right now in our pro forma as we design the project. I think that this location, being in an area that has affordable housing that's relatively new, and it has apartments around it. The property to the north is the remainder of this apartment project. And this property, if you've been down to the end of Liberty Place, this property is a kennel property down at the end as well. There really are no single family homes in the direct vicinity, isolated. It's sort of in a neat little cul-de-sac area. I think it's a perfect place to add a few more affordable units. What I'd like to do is just turn it over to Ms. Bartlett. I think you have some sort of 8 by 17 or 11 by 17 handouts. Have Ellen just talk a little bit about the layout, and then I'll have Brian Cleveland come up and talk a little bit about the actual building design. And then really just want to turn it over to you and get your comments and suggestions. Again, the purpose tonight is to hear from you, and we really want to try to make it the best 830G project we can if we're going to be going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ellen. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Bartlett with CLA Engineers. We're out of Norwich, Connecticut. And the plan that we have up on the screen is very conceptual. We're really looking for some input before we go any further with the plans. We did, however, go out and flag the wetlands. They're shown in blue. There's also a wetlands channel that runs along the northern property line. We've done 10 test holes throughout the site, so we know, we have a pretty good idea that we can get the septic system to work and the stormwater system to work. We're proposing a stormwater basin in this area. It will take all the runoff for the new development, as well as we hope to catch a good part of the runoff from the existing parking lot into the stormwater system. We're going to use the existing access onto Liberty Place, come through their parking lot, and then have parking in the rear of the property. The regulations recommend 1 space per apartment unit as a minimum, and as a maximum 2 spaces per apartment. This conceptual plan is right down the middle. We've got 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. So we're proposing 24 residential units. 23 of them would be 1-bedrooms, and then there'd be 1 2-bedroom apartment in the building as proposed. So we'd be providing 1.5 parking spaces per unit. We show a dumpster in the rear, and the septic system would be along the rear. We're keeping all of the actual improvements out of the 100-foot upland review zone. Our first step, once we get into the formal application, would be to submit to the Wetlands Commission. We have been speaking with your wetlands agent and have an idea that what we're proposing may be acceptable to Wetlands Commission, but they would have the first crack at it to decide what we can do. As Bill Sweeney pointed out, there is a thickly wooded area between the site and 95, but we propose to put some more evergreens in there just to be as not only a buffer so you wouldn't see it from 95, but also so we won't see 95. The residents would not be looking at 95. There'd be a vegetated buffer along there. This is just a really conceptual landscape plan, but we do intend to enhance the landscaping along the frontage, along Liberty Place, add some shade trees along the existing parking area. The north side of the building would have some utilities, probably a transformer, some condensing units. So we would put a lot of vegetation to screen this. We've done a number of test holes on the site, so we know what we've got for soils. We know a conceptual septic system along the rear, and when we go forward, we'll do additional test holes to make sure we really can fit this in. But this plan, as I said, is very conceptual. We really are hoping to get some feedback from you as a commission before we really go into fully developed design plans. So at this point, I think we'd like to hear from Brian, our architect for the project. He can show you what the building's going to look like conceptually.
So for you, those of you at home can't see it on the screen. What we are proposing is a 2-story hip roof building, which is complementary to the building that is there currently. Right now, it's a 2-story building, have balconies that go around the entire perimeter of those existing buildings with a hip roof on it, primarily clad in brick. That's the existing composition of the 2 buildings there. We're going to be integrating some of that brick into the design in a wainscot down at the first floor, and then also introducing that into some of the front elevation. This particular elevation is one that faces towards 95. Because of the orientation of the parking, we are proposing that all of the entrances will be at the front of the building, so facing towards 95, towards the parking lot, with an entrance on both the left and the right-hand side of the building. There is not proposed to be any elevator. We're not required to provide an elevator for this building. All of the units are very complementary to what more reasonably priced and affordable units would end up being. They're approximately 600 square feet, with the two-bedroom being about 825. These units are all one bedrooms, not studios. So we are looking at making them true one bedrooms. The existing units on the property are studios with these large balconies outside the perimeter of the building. So we're actually keeping the footprint of this building as small, if not slightly smaller than the existing building, but the unit's interior spaces are actually about 150 square feet larger than the current building's units are. So our footprint is staying tight. We're staying complementary to the design of the existing buildings by keeping them hip roofs, some brick accents, more traditional looking for the New England style, particularly here in Clinton, with some clapboard siding for the half story plus the second floor. We're going to be meeting all accessibility requirements. We're going to have 4 accessible type A units on the ground floor. The remainder of the units on the ground floor will be type B accessible. Because it's a walk up, the upstairs units are not required to be accessible, but they're all going to be roughly the same configurations, even though they don't need to be accessible because of that walk up situation. There will be common laundry within the building, as well as common hot water for the unit use. So there's a central corridor that would allow the residents to then come down to the first floor and access common laundry space that is in the center of the building, with a small mechanical space that is accessed from the rear of the building. I think that's all I have, at least to show you guys for right now, but if you have any questions relative to the building layout, we can go through those.
I have a question more for the attorney. Sure. Been a while since I've done one, but if I recall, with the affordable housing statute, I'll say the tie goes to the affordability part, so the 2-bedroom one has to be designated as affordable, is that correct? Usually, if there's a disproportionate amount of 1 or 2 bedrooms, the odd one goes to the benefit of the affordability component. So my question, why would you put the 2-bedroom in there if it has to go to?
Yeah, I'm not sure it does anymore, but what's the status of the 2-bedroom right now, Brian?
Yeah, so the reason why the only reason is 2-bedroom is because we have this very symmetrical building axis here, having 1 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms on either side of this laundry space in the center. So therefore, there's a little bit of extra space in the second floor. Hence the reason why it ended up becoming a 2-bedroom rather than just another 1-bedroom.
But I think that's something that.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Generally.
I know it used to be.
Yeah, generally there should be, first of all, fits and finishes should be similar throughout the building. And then if there are different location and phasing, if you have multiple buildings, you have to keep the percentage. But when you have sort of that odd man out, I'm not sure that the second has to be designated as affordable, but I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, because I know it used to be. If there was one larger unit,
Sure.
So my only question was, I was surprised at how low the percentage of, the units had to be affordable.
Yeah, so the state law requires 30% of the units in the building to be affordable. And of that 30%, half have to be at 80% AMI and half have to be at 60% AMI. So it's 7.2 units, which round up to 8. So half at 80%, 4 at 80%, and 4 at 60%. That's the minimum. You know, we're still working through the pro forma right now. We may increase that slightly, but we really wanted to try to do a mixed income project. Generally speaking, that's sort of where the industry is going. We think there are some values to having mixed income, particularly when there's no difference in the fit and finishes. Gets a little bit different of an income profile in a building, creates a little bit of diversity in the building, and I think long term it creates a better sort of neighborhood atmosphere in the building, rather than having them all affordable or a large percentage of them affordable. We like to have that mixed income approach with some market rates in the building. Right now, we're looking at the 30-70 mix, but I do know, talking with my client, that's still open at this point, and if it was something that the commission wanted us to look at, we'd be more than happy to look at.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. I'm looking at the topography lines on this site plan, proposed site plan here. And a lot of them are around like 10 and 12 feet and stuff, which is all below base flood elevation, which I understand probably isn't too big of an issue in this area because it's not direct sound frontage. However, the Indian River, which is fed from the mill ponds, and as well other sources of water, the town, all come right through that area where you're proposing to build this. Is that gonna have to be built like flood compliant? I mean, we have had a lot of rain events this past year.
The answer is 100%. 830G does not excuse you from building in fire code issues. So you would have to build to FEMA standard, but I'm not aware that this building is located in the flood zone. Ellen, do you want to mention that at all? Or do you want to talk about that?
It is not located within, the proposed building is not located within the floodplain.
Okay, and what is this blue dashed mark on the map that goes through the parking lot of the existing building? Curves around and then right down the edge of the.
That's the 100-foot upland review area to the blue wetlands on the north edge. So the Wetland Commission has jurisdiction with sort of everything north of that blue dotted line. That's not a floodplain line.
I mean, there's really tough to mark the elevations there, but there is white topographic lines going right through the building that it. 12 feet.
Ellen, is it correct to say that your final survey of this property is not complete yet, including your topography?
That is true. We have not done a boundary survey yet, and this topography is based on the state LiDAR topography. So we will be having, we will be doing a better survey before we actually develop the plans. But
I suggested that we come
generally-
before you and at least share with you our concept before we have my client take the expense of the full-blown survey of the property. But yeah, it'll be a full A2 survey with registered topography, and to the extent that there's any flood prone areas, those have to be marked on the plan, and anything we build has to meet that regardless of whether we use 830G or not. And Ellen, based on her initial analysis, does not believe there'll be any impact on floodplain.
Oh, so in like the spirit of like the informal conversation.
Yeah.
We're working on our design standards at this time. They're not regulations yet, they're informal meetings that they're something that like maybe we could flip to. I mean, largely it seems like they're kind of in the jive of what we're trying to go with here, but show those or during the architectural process or something to maybe listen to see what those are before they become.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I think, as you know, as you probably know, 830G projects do not have to adhere to architectural standards promulgated by the town. But as I said before, we're looking to do a friendly 830G project. So we'd be happy to take a look at your design guidelines. Sometimes those design guidelines add cost to a project that basically renders the project not affordable. But to the extent that we may be able to pay homage to it, or to address or maybe provide some elements that are low cost and affordable to the project, we'd be more than happy to do that. So if you have true defined design guidelines, if you have ideas, Abby can pass them along to us. I can share them with Brian, and to the extent that we might be able to incorporate them, or at least give some honor to them in our efforts, we'd be more than happy to. Even if we don't have to legally do it, we want to do that. We would try to want to make this a positive experience, not a negative one. The last thing I want to do is an adversarial 830G. It's just not how I practice.
Just if I, is it possible to comment? So one of the things that the attorney Sweeney and I talked about when we met was, sort of amenities for residents, and sort of in that same design guideline piece, or some of the pieces that come into the project. So the bike rack conversation, the outdoor space, is there a common green space that folks can use that's not sort of dedicated to the stormwater treatment? Is it meaningful recreational space for folks down there? And so that was that also, perhaps the folks in the other building could take advantage of as well. So some
there's really nothing on site right now. It's literally a building with a driveway around it. So one of the things we have to work with is with the Wetlands Commission, because we have so much of our green space is in their upland review area. But we've talked about things like passive recreation areas, picnic tables, barbecue area, fire pit, the idea of having bike racks. These are all things we'd like to do, but we likely are those are all going to fall within the upland review area. So there's a balance there. in my experience, those kinds of passive, amenities often can be permitted as long as you're not within 50 feet. If you do it in sort of the 75-foot to 100-foot range, you usually have a better chance of that. So that'd be something we work in with the wetland agent on as we develop the plan, but we're not looking, just to be clear, we're not looking for active recreation like tennis courts or basketball courts, because we just don't have the room, and any of the green space we have here is probably going to be regulated by the Inland Wetlands Commission. It's probably more of a passive approach.
Just like to point out, I'm looking at the renderings and understand Zach's concerns. It is architecturally pleasing, draft of the show. It's not just a block. It's got clapboards, it's got brick base, it's got different, roof designs and so on. So it's got some character to it. It's not just a rectangle.
And it's not on your main street. So I think architecture has context with where you put it in the community too. And so, I mean, I think that, quite frankly, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but the building across the street on Liberty Place is very nice that they did, in 2017. But you can see that from Liberty Place. The ability to see this building is going to be limited to the people who live here. So I think, Brian really went above and beyond, do something quality, even though probably the only people that are going to see it on a regular basis are the residents of the building itself.
Any other comments from the commission? I appreciate you coming and sharing it.
It was a good experience last time I was here. I'm glad to come again, and look forward to seeing you again, hopefully later this year. But we really do appreciate the input, and we always think this is a great way to introduce ourselves rather than coming in with an application first. So thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Old business. The first one is, Planning and Zoning Commission 24-2, that's the kiosk, proposal that we, proposed amendment to allow kiosk. And vehicle charging together. The public hearing is closed, so now we're, into, discussion and consideration. So does anybody want to discuss this tonight, or do you want to wait till next week or next month, excuse me? I prefer to do some of the discussion tonight to give some direction to Abby and the staff.
Am I allowed to participate in the discussion?
No.
Why we keep kicking it?
Deliberation.
Why we keep kicking it down the road, down the road? Why not make some discussion?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is have the discussion and, okay.
I just have, in this discussion, like, okay, interesting, we refer to staff questions as well, or is that? I guess I just have a question about all this, and I'm not sure how that goes in regulation.
Well, now we're into deliberation. So you can ask your questions, we're discussing as a group. And you can certainly direct questions to Abby.
But as long as it's not new information that's not already in the record, so you're limited in your analysis now to what is in the record. So that's an important aspect here. But if it's a clarifying point on what our regulations say, POCD, any of that kind of stuff, we can certainly go into those pieces.
Okay. Yeah,
Did you have a?
I did, I'm just gonna need a second to correct.
Okay. One of the things that, I think is important is, this is a.
You're smashing real hard.
Yeah, I want to hang up. Okay. One of the things that I wanted to say is, this is a different, zoning regulation. So it is not necessarily required to be consistent with the other regulations as much as it has to be consistent with the town plan as was stated. And that, that's really the big point, is whether you feel it's consistent with that or not. Okay, at least in my view, is where you've got to come down for each of it. And is it consistent with the town plan? And we have to each make that decision based on what I'm reading it back. And so I'm putting this all back on you guys. You've got to read the town plan, you've got to know how it fits. Okay, I'm not going to tell you how to vote. Okay, that's not my role. Okay, I'm just telling you that you need to make sure you're considering that, when you're considering, making your decision. Okay,
Excuse me, I have a question.
go ahead, Dick.
This has nothing to do with the site plan or.
Correct.
This is just a zoning issue of
This is
the
the
sign
regulation,
being
this is creation of a regulation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
To this? If we said, okay, let them do it. Are we setting a precedent for the whole town?
What we're doing here isn't unique to Stop and Shop. We should, this is unique to those three zones. Okay. And it has to be consistent, I believe I'm saying this correctly from the regulation, it has to be associated with the business. Okay, it can't be a standalone in that. If I recall I have it here, correct someplace. Okay.
So the way, yeah, so the way that the regulation would work is that essentially for folks who have the site qualifications and the physical parameters that meet the conditions in the proposed text, that in those zone districts, you could consider, you're not mandated to approve, but you would be, people would be able to apply, and you could consider under a special exception application, the installation of these units.
As a secondary unit.
Right. And if you did it once, that means it's for everyone going down the road also. We changed it to allow them.
Each one would be site specific.
So the regulation amendment would enable folks to apply for those districts, those types of applications.
Okay, but it would still be site specific.
But in general, if it's a special exception, if an applicant meets the requirements that we specify for a special exception, then you are prove it. It can't be completely arbitrary.
It can be arbitrary, you're right.
I remain concerned about the changing display and the safety considerations that this has. There's so much data, there's so many places. Distracting, changing electronics. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Boy, Ellen's talking.
I thought she finished.
You are moving more slowly in a parking lot. There's an awful lot more distraction in a parking too. That remains a major consideration of mine. We're just changing.
Thank you. Ed, you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo what Ella was talking about, the pedestrian safety and everything. Everybody's on their cell phones and people going through the parking lot. There's a lot of accidents in that area. You can check the records yourself. With people looking over now to see what that says. It's like looking at a cell phone, say you're picking up your cell phone. So that's one of the things. And I like to echo what Bo said. It's going against our regulations and stuff. So we'd have to get special exceptions and everything to do all this. But there's a big safety aspect in this. If you just think about people going through the parking lot, they're texting and calling and then they're gonna be looking at, now they're looking at that sign, what do they say? I don't think it warrants changing the regulations for that. That's, or a special exception. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
So I tend to agree with Bo, like this is a sign, whether you call it a sign or not, kind of thing. And we have like LED sign regulations under the illumination sign, like regulation sign, which they're kind of talking about it. It's not written in the amendment here, but it's, you know, closing it, not during business hours, dimming them and such. I mean, would people be comfortable if we amended their definitions more so, and as opposed to saying shall not be considered a sign, and allow this to be governed by the LED signs? Or there, I have written here that 36.3 34.6.1, there's like stop. Shopping center signage regulations, like. Kind of like. Melding the two or something of the sort to the existing. Regulations we have on the books, as opposed to. Making a new one, calling it something it's not. Go.
Well, to make a change like that in the text right now would probably be better to deny it. And then say, make a counter. Than to, try to adjust their language at this point.
Agree with that.
Because what you're proposing would be a significant change. And, now that the public hearing's closed, that would be, they don't get a chance to respond to it. Okay. But that, what you would be doing is bringing it back into the sign regulations. So, and I've noted before, we have the ability to make this separate from the sign regulation. Don't have to. But just because we have the ability to do it, you still have to make it what you think is consistent. And so that's, in that case, I would go with you saying, the way I interpret what you said is, it would be better to deny it and then
That's
make it a different vote.
That's largely what I'm kind of starting to gather from. I mean, the way this is written is just not consistent with the principle of everything, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mike.
Is those screens are just way too big. 55, it's like a 55-inch TV. And it's huge. So that'd be so distracting.
Building on what you said, this isn't a primary pedestrian zone, like people aren't walking to the stop shop. They're not, if this was in a place where people walk to the grocery store, I get it, but it's a driving place.
Actually, I go the other way. But, anyway, and I see a hand up over there.
Kenzie, you can.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Sorry. So I just want to kind of bring it back to the POCD. So, and our regulations. I mean, I know the POCD, I think does want us to move to more electrical vehicle parking. But from what I understand, I don't see or have read anything in the POCD that specifies that the vision for electric vehicle parking or the wishes of the community that electric vehicle parking with the added kiosks. I mean, Abby, can I ask if that is anywhere? I mean, because I don't believe it is.
I don't believe there's any reference in our current POCD to this particular technology, no.
Right, but there is reference to wanting to move toward more electrical vehicle parking.
Correct, as it also with the zoning regulations, there are provisions for electric vehicles.
Correct. So, and then I'm with the POCD with the more electric vehicle parking and our regulations, but I'm also looking at what the people of this community want, and they want to keep a certain look, a certain quaintness, and to me, you cannot unmarry certain zones from a community. To say that, well, that zone, we can unmarry that and the look and the feel that community members want to have when they're going through that zone. It's okay to have certain signage or certain kiosks, types of electric vehicle parking in those areas because they don't fit the aesthetics that the community and the POCD want. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Anybody else who want to comment? Do you feel like you have some ideas that you can?
So to clarify, it seems as though right now the commission is leaning toward asking staff to draft a recommended motion for denial with a particular set of findings based on the record, and the conversation that you had here today, and then present that to you for your modification and reaching it the next.
That's what I'm hearing too. Okay. So and if we can have that next month, then we'll be in great shape. Okay. With that, we'll move on to planning and zoning. 24-5, which is the Kingdom application. Side work. There is, possible language for approval of the CAM in the, documents from, staff, if anybody's interested in, approving this.
24-5, Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me?
24-5, you say?
Yeah, 24-5.
And I like to make a motion to approve that.
Yes.
Okay, the findings are that it's consistent with the,
Yeah, the findings are consistent with the plan of conservation and development. And,
it mitigates all coastal.
yep, and then we should have a, in there, we should, like, Zach said, maybe, go up there once in a while and check it out. Once a month or something, when they're dredging, because they can't dredge all year long.
And so to that end, there's two applications that PZC 24-5 is the coastal site plan in particular.
Yep.
PZC 24-6, and which comes with different findings than the special exception would be. So I would make a friendly recommendation that if there's any conditions for either notification to staff of, from the ownership group when dredging is going to start, and the ability of our
It should all go on.
that would go on 6, right?
Yeah.
So if we're on 5 now, then I would not recommend conditions there.
So,
Clarification, is Eddie moving to adopt the recommended wording, or is he substituting practical?
Betty, are you moving to accept the language that Abby wrote for this motion?
Sure.
Okay.
With the provision that, with the additional provision that, they keep an open.
No, that's.
No.
It's not that they're strangers to us, and Mr. Chairman, they've been here, I have to just say they will just follow the guidelines.
Do we have a second? Mike seconded, okay.
Cynthia, did you have a comment on this motion?
Oh, no, sorry, my hand's still raised.
Okay.
Put your hand down.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion?
Is this long lost regulation about the maximum height at this location? I've been around long enough that I remember this whole go around about base level for total elevation was this 1987.
We did away with that.
Nobody can find.
Right.
So that was taken out of the regulations.
Yes.
So does that mean that we now have no regulation for the maximum height in this area because of this uncertain reference in our reg?
The Marine District.
Yeah, because I just remember when John Biskowski was here as our consulting town planner, that was, there was no.
It's like 30 feet, but 30 feet above what? And if they build to 26, you're now talking about 66.
No, I understand your point, yeah.
Because this map went missing. It's if you lost the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah,
In other words, we have to redefine what our base is.
Correct. So right now, the minimum building height for any structure in the Marine District is at 30 feet. So that would be from your ground.
Right.
Right, because you don't have a provision for that previous establishment that was removed, and we're using it the same way we do for any other building.
So by allowing, if this, younger Mr. Shapiro's idea of housing ever did come to pass. And if this, is allowed to go to the 26 feet or wherever they're talking about, we're talking about 56 feet above sea level.
Potentially, again, all the special exceptions and requirements and public hearings that would have to go into a residential application and multiple considerations about that location should certainly.
Okay, and is there any way that we can go back and come up with some kind of base level, you know, going forward?
We would need to explore our options because, you know, at that point, we would be rezoning something that was, you know, the rights now are now with the property. And so the question is where would we fall and how would that be received? So I think we can certainly talk about what our options might be if that data, what the previous regulation before my time was based on was not readily available. Part of the question would be, is it available? Could we find it? And if that's not something we can do, then we would have to have another standard that we put into the zoning and sort of say, what is the basis in the marine zone or in any coastal area? You know, so for establishing particular heights and then.
So I guess my basic question is approving this making that situation any worse?
I think because right now the residential is hypothetical, it would be hard to tie this application to a potential for a future exercise of a use pending review, design and approval by the commission.
You tend, put it on a hypothetical like that, and we're
Well, I
definitely.
mean, yeah, I understand, it's hypothetical, but it is an approved, you know, it is a legal zoning use in that area.
Correct, so
The
what,
other
so
thing is.
Yeah, that's been approved for a
It's
zone.
a big issue for us for the entire code. That we don't have and so it is something, irrespective of this project, that we probably need to deal with.
I think we have some provisions in the P O C D elements in the coastal resiliency plan that's going on right now. And just sort of a recognition that there needs to be some policy discussion and potentially ultimately regulations for the commission to consider relative to how coastal land uses are managed. So certainly that's the discussion.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, it's the only place there's any filling going on in the marine zone, and therefore the place where there's variable ground.
Can I say, well,
Question, change it 4 feet.
Yeah.
That's all, 4 feet, not, it's already,
It's already up there.
yeah, no, yeah.
I would like to mention too, that there are things in the regulations that, like our other regulations, such as like obstructing views and such that like technically are thought of this whole future scenario as well to be considered. It's not approving this and then approving the next one and having it 30 feet and then talking about buildings being built is so far down the line and there's other regulations that apply as opposed to this one that I don't see the value in debating whether this 4 feet applies 20 years from now with that.
Mr. Chairman, may I add one more thing? If anybody's been down there lately, maybe they are doing the right thing because the water. I went to go get a hot dog and you couldn't get down to the shack. I mean, all the water, the high water is coming in, and then Shore Road. That's why they're building those houses FEMA compliant now because it is going to be raised. I mean, the water level is rising, and that's a fact. That's a known fact. The water is coming up to Grove and Commerce Street. The water is up at that corner. So I don't know. I just feel like we're worried about height. I'm worried about the water coming in. I mean, what they're doing right now is they need to do that, and it's cost effective for them.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion on the floor is the can. Do we have any more discussion on the can? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes.
Okay, anybody opposed? I didn't catch that. No? Okay. Now we move on. So that's the CAM's approved, so now we can move on to 4-6, which is the special exception language. Okay, and, again, Abby has provided a recommended motion. You don't have to follow it exactly, but it's in there on the last page of staff report. She did note a important condition on there. We need a stamped copy of the approved plan be submitted to the zoning enforcement officer prior to the start of work. Would anybody be willing to make the motion here or make a modified version?
I'd make that same motion and add what Zach said. Once they notify that they have to be compliant with DEEP and everything, Army Corps, to when they can dredge, when they can't dredge, but to have our zoning enforcement officer go down and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do when, and be notified when before they start dredging.
I thought Zach wanted a written record of their inspection. Yeah.
It's essentially saying everything's working well. Maybe check. Yeah.
So condition that they have a written record.
Maintain a written.
Maintain a written.
inspection.
Yeah, keep a diary, whatever, a log when they start, when they finish, how much they, and get a baseline where they are at now.
Okay.
Would you want that log to be kept by the engineer or the owner, or who would you like that to be?
The party responsible for maintaining the
I think this is
spillway.
the owner.
Ultimately, the owner should provide that.
Okay,
So what I have as a prospective second condition is, notification to the ZEO is required prior to the start of dredging on an annual basis, and that the owner maintain a written record of progress within the parameters of this approval. Is that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Abby.
Okay. Do we have a second? Okay, Jay got that one. Okay, any further discussion? Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Committee reports, I don't believe we have any this month.
No, and we actually wound up canceling the regulations committee this month in part because we were just a little bit maxed out in the office and couldn't get you materials that were of sufficient quality to review. We didn't want to give you something that was sort of half-baked. So we'll make sure we have that for you for next month, and that what we're working on now is section 30 and getting that part updated for general design requirements townwide. And once we have that in place, we'll bring it back to the full commission and then move on design.
Thank you. Okay, I didn't see any correspondence or bills.
No.
So that allows us to move on to adjournment. Anybody want to do that?
Mr. Chairman, point of order, please. I've been on this commission for a long time, and maybe too long, but we used to be able to get all the bills. We used to get bills from the attorneys. We used to know where our money's going, and I think I just think that you should sign off after we look at the bills. So we haven't seen a bill. I went back almost a year. There has been no bills. And where it says correspondent bills, no bills at all, no attorney bills, no anything. We pay those bills, planning and zoning. And I think everything should be approved it should go back to the way it used to be. When we have a bill, it's approved by this commission, not by Kathy, not by anybody else, but us.
yeah, one of the issues we had, and then we went through this before when we had the commission, was that there were some bills and there was discussion about not paying one, and it was services rendered to the town engineer. It really wasn't up for discussion. Services had been rendered. And so at that point, it was when John Guskowski was our consulting town planner, they were paying the bills internally for things like, legal notices, It's attorney, work, we don't really need commission approval for those things. It can be.
Yeah, but we
commission-
should know what, Kathy, with all due respect, the plan and zoning is the people that hire you and, hire everybody. We're supposed to be a commission, and as a commission, we never get to see the bills anymore. We used to even question bills. We caught a few bills that shouldn't have been paid. And we caught maybe one bill that wasn't paid. Okay, but on a whole, you're approving all the bills and everything. I mean, that's not right. I mean, this commission is a commission and it shouldn't just be one person overseeing everything. And I think our chairman should look at the bills. Abby.
So go ahead.
Yep, so I think that a couple of things, there's maybe some procedural elements in terms of how staffing works and how the budget works. So the commission approves the operating budget for the department. We go through this every year. And you say, okay, we're okay with spending to these limits. We're budgeting X amount for legal notices, training, whatever that looks like. Salaries, the whole 9 yards, that endorsement that goes forward and we move it along to the town manager. The town manager is responsible for creating, managing, overseeing the budget and staff.
He's
So
in charge of everything.
any of the financial elements that come into that go through the town manager's office. Things like the legal budget are actually not housed in planning and zoning. It is housed with the town manager. There haven't been legal bills in part for this commission because they've been over at CBA. So there's been other places that went, but certainly if the commission is looking for reporting and transparency in where the money is flowing and how the amount budgeted and allocated every single year goes to, gets spent, absolutely, we can provide that, at any time.
Let me ask you a question. If the planning and zoning is getting sued, shouldn't, if we're paying a bill, shouldn't we know that? Shouldn't the chairman know
Well,
that?
that's what you're saying. Ed, do you think that it'd be sufficient if we got a written report of the expenditures? Not that we would have to approve them,
We
but
don't have to prove it. We should know where that money's going, Bo.
that's what I mean. Would it be okay if they submitted a report
Yeah.
saying that these were our expenditures? Not that we necessarily have to approve them, in order for them to be paid, but just a report. Yeah, I think that's what he's asking for. a monthly
That's
report.
what I'm asking for. I'm asking to see where the money goes. That's all. We have a right to do that as a commission.
That's completely fine. I think it had been taken out of past practice because it was really deferred to staff under John and then kind of carried forward when I arrived. But if the commission wants more information, absolutely, this is public information for you.
We did it, Abby, for forever and ever. We always said, and the chairman will tell you, we have any bills, and with the bills, and then some people will question it. You remember that, Ellen? We used to look at some bills and question.
It did get changed when the town manager took over and decided that we shouldn't be approving things because it was his,
Yeah, there were a number of things that went on right there about, we didn't hire a separate attorney, it all got worked for you. That was a lot.
But providing a report is fine, right?
providing a report. We
Okay,
just did-
and in all due respect, I know for a fact that letters are being sent in and if they say any correspondence and they're saying no. And I know for a fact that 13 letters have never been in, now there's another full, there's no transparency here. People can laugh, you can smile all you want, but all I know is there's lawsuits coming and I hear them. That's why I recuse myself from one of them. We should have complete transparency. If there's any correspondence, any letters that are coming from the people that elected us, we should have that read into the record. And if you guys don't want to do that, I don't even know why we have a commission.
Eddie, those were written, sent to the record after the public hearing closed, and that's why they are part of the record, and they were in there as correspondence, but once the record, the legal, public hearing is closed, you don't get any new correspondence from the public.
Right. And the correspondence is, the correspondence at this point in the agenda is correspondence outside of application.
Correct.
This, all the letters related to any of the applications is in the application file.
this would be like a letter from Madison.
Right.
Explaining what.
So, because when I went through, for example, the electric kiosk, folder, there are many letters in there. Okay. Well, many, there are several letters in there,
There's emails, there's all kinds.
but and you do that with every application.
Mhm.
So the letters are in there, but that's not what this means by correspondence here.
I understand that.
Okay.
Do we still have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
We haven't made it yet, did we?
I'm not seated, so otherwise I mean.
We got a motion, did we have a second? Okay, all in favor?
All right.
We're
Night, everybody.
done. Thank you very much, everybody.